Alright, guys, it's time to talk about Hurricane Helene and its potential impacts to the southeastern United States. Now, today's Wednesday, September 25th, and we're still over 24 hours away from landfall, so some of the more finer details will likely change a little bit, but I can still show you the general idea of what we'll be talking about and the potential impacts for Florida and the rest of the southeastern United States. And like always refer to the National Hurricane Center for continued updates on this storm. So, as of this afternoon, we're talking about a Category 1 hurricane, Helene. Pressure is around 978 millibars. And based on this latest visible satellite imagery, it looks like we even have a little bit of an eye trying to clear out here to the north of the Yucatan Peninsula. And earlier this morning, it came very close to almost the landfall over Cancun, but now it's moving a little bit to the north of that now, and it seems to be strengthening. We do still have a little bit of dry air being mixed in there, right into the core of the system there. So that's why we haven't seen rapid intensification today. It was more of a gradual intensification, as long as it's still pulling in some of that drier air. Otherwise, wind shear is low, so we should be continuing to see strengthening with this storm over the next 24 hours, and it's staying over very warm waters. Now, just looking at the path of this storm, this is the latest hurricane models, and almost all of them are in very good agreement, bringing it straight northward and northeastward, and making a landfall right around near the Apalachicola, Florida area. There's still room; it could move a little bit. The landfall location to the little bit to the east or west, maybe closer to Tallahassee, to the south of Tallahassee. Still stuff to be ironed out over the next 24 hours. But then in general, after landfall, the storm will start to get pulled westward because we have a low pressure system that will be over Arkansas, and then we also have a high pressure system to the east of Florida and another one over the Great Lakes region. And so with that type of setup, after landfall, Helene will start to get pulled westward toward Tennessee and Kentucky, and it will be absorbed by that low pressure system over Arkansas. And then beyond that, it might meander a little bit into the Ohio Valley into next week. And then looking at the alerts right now, this is looking at the current alerts from the National Weather Service. Basically, almost all of Florida is in some sort of tropical storm watch warning or hurricane warning. And then even encompassing now the entire state of Georgia, we have tropical storm watches as far north as Atlanta, and even going further north into North Carolina, we have tropical storm watches even for places like Asheville, North Carolina. The potential is that this system, after it makes landfall, it won't weaken too quickly, and we could be talking about tropical storm and even hurricane force gusts possible as far north as Atlanta. So we could be talking about some pretty tremendous tree damages for places well far inland there in the southeastern United States. I'll show you all the details here in a bit. And so the next I want to show you what the hurricane models are saying for Helene. I'm starting off with the HWRF, usually considered one of the most accurate hurricane models. And over the next 24 hours, it brings it down to sub 920 millibars. That would be Category 5 strength, but I really hope it doesn't get that strong, and I really hope that these models are overdoing it and being too aggressive with the storm, because the HAPS-A model right here is showing 921 millibars right before landfall, and even the HAPS-B is also showing around 930 millibars. The HMON model also showing around 930 millibars right before landfall. These would all be Category 4 or Category 5 strength, and what I'm hoping is that all of these models are being too aggressive with Helene, and it's not that strong. I would think it's more in the Category 3 or Category 4 range, but with the models are just saying that there's potential for even stronger than that. So like I always say, just prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so next I want to show you the water temperatures of where Helene is going to be going over. So anywhere in this purplish color is extremely hot waters over 87 degrees Fahrenheit or about 30.5 degrees Celsius. That is plenty warm to maintain a strong major hurricane. And Helene will be staying over waters this hot over the next about 12 to 18 hours until it's around halfway up the Gulf of Mexico, where when we get into the northeastern and northern Gulf of Mexico, water temperatures cool down a little bit to around 84 to 85 degrees Celsius. 84 to 85 Fahrenheit, or about 29 Celsius. And so next I want to show you the future radar and the wind gusts and the rainfall out of this over the next 24 to 48 hours. And so with that, first I'll be using the NAM model. Now the NAM always overdoes hurricane strength because it's not a hurricane model, it's a mesoscale model. And so the reason I'm going to be using it though is because it has a very its landfall location is almost right where all the hurricane models have it making landfall. And its future radar and size of the storm itself is very accurate to what the hurricane models are saying. So that's why I'm going to be using the NAM. Now the wind gusts might be a little too strong because it tends to make these hurricanes too powerful because, like I said, it's not a hurricane model. But I'll get to that once I show you the wind. Now taking this hour by hour going into Thursday morning, we're already going to have a lot of rain out ahead of it into portions of Georgia and the Carolinas. But the core of Helene will start to approach the Florida Panhandle tomorrow afternoon and evening, and landfall should occur sometime between 8 p.m. and midnight Eastern Time. Anywhere between Apalachicola to the south of Tallahassee is where the best bet is for landfall to occur. It could be a little bit to the east of that as well. Now, even places well out to the east of it, like Tampa, we have to watch out for some pretty major storm surge flooding, even though you're going to be pretty far from the center of the storm. You're still going to get into that storm surge for places like Tampa and pretty much the entire western coast of the Florida Peninsula. And also another thing to keep an eye on is these outer rain bands on its eastern side. We'll have to watch out for some embedded tornadoes with that. Pretty much anywhere in the Florida Peninsula will have a chance for a few tornadoes tomorrow, as they will be within those outer rain bands. Now after it makes landfall, it'll continue upwards through Georgia, bringing very heavy rainfall into portions of Georgia, maybe Alabama, and into the Carolinas tomorrow night, overnight into early Friday morning. And then still on Friday afternoon, we have to watch out for some of these outer rain bands across the Carolinas, because these could easily be producing some tornadoes, especially across portions of eastern Georgia, South Carolina, perhaps as far north as North Carolina. And then once we get into Friday afternoon and night, it starts to move to the north. And it quickly starts to get sheared apart as it moves northward into the Tennessee Valley once we get into Friday night. Now next I want to show you the wind gusts, and once again these might be overdone because the NAM, like I said, tends to overdo hurricane strength. But in general, tomorrow night, once we get to tomorrow evening, we could be talking about wind gusts as high as 60 to 70 miles per hour for portions of Tampa Bay, and then into portions of the Tallahassee area, getting those hurricane force gusts once we get past 8 p.m. tomorrow. And anyway, the area around landfall, easily getting over 100 mile per hour gusts, potentially getting, depending on how strong the storm is by that point, we could be talking about wind gusts over 120 miles per hour anywhere. Even if you're not particularly in the eye wall, areas in the eye wall could obviously get stronger winds based on the strength of the storm. But in general, we could be talking about wind gusts over 90 miles per hour for a large portion of the Florida Panhandle and even into portions of southern Georgia. Now, a lot of attention will be on the Florida Panhandle because that's what we make in landfall. But a lot of models are showing that this storm is not going to weaken as quickly as other hurricanes once they move inland. So southern portions of Georgia into the overnight hours on Friday morning, we could be talking about wind gusts upwards of 90 miles per hour across a huge area of southern Georgia. And then beyond that, going into Friday morning and afternoon, we could be talking about wind gusts still over 75 miles per hour or hurricane strength as far north as Atlanta, maybe even like Greenville, South Carolina. And then even into portions of Asheville, North Carolina, Friday morning and afternoon, getting wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. So we could be talking about tremendous power line and tree damage across much of Georgia, western South Carolina, and western North Carolina to Friday morning and afternoon from the remnants of Hurricane Helene. And this will be on top of the very heavy rain that will be falling. So we could be talking about widespread power outages for much of Georgia, the western Carolinas, into the southern Appalachians. And then so looking at the future rainfall from Hurricane Helene, basically anywhere from the Florida Panhandle to the southern Appalachians Could be getting about 4 to 10 inches of rainfall. But an area I'm especially concerned about is the southern Appalachians, basically from northern Georgia into the western Carolinas, because weather models have been predicting 10 to 15 inches of rain for this area. And if that does happen, we could be talking about some pretty catastrophic flash flooding for this area here. Places like Atlanta, Greenville, Asheville, North Carolina. And remember, on top of that, we'll be getting wind gusts upwards of 70 to 75 miles per hour for this same area. So we could be talking about some pretty widespread damage still, even though you're well inland from the landfall location. Something to keep an eye on and be prepared for if you live in this area, because this storm is not going to weaken quickly like other hurricanes do. And then, so looking at some of the impacts across the Tennessee Valley and the lower Ohio Valley, continuing with the wind gusts going into Friday afternoon. We could be talking about wind gusts in the 60 to 70 mile per hour range for much of Kentucky. Could certainly be talking about tree and power line damage there in Kentucky Friday afternoon. The NAM is, like I said, I think it's being a little bit too aggressive with these wind forecasts, trying to bring 70 mile per hour gusts in this area of Kentucky. I think it'll be more in the 60 to 70 mile per hour range. But anyway, going into Friday afternoon, trying to bring gusts up to 60 to 65 miles per hour, even into southern portions of Indiana, maybe southern Illinois. And also wind gusts upwards of 50 miles per hour anywhere from southern Ohio over into portions of southern Missouri going into Friday night. Here we go. Like I said, 50 mile per hour gusts possible. Anywhere from Columbus, Indianapolis over towards St. Louis Friday night before the system starts to quickly weaken once we go into Saturday morning. But still going into early Saturday morning, gusts up to 40 miles per hour possible. Even as far north as lower Michigan, going westward into Missouri. And then looking at the future rainfall across the Tennessee Valley, this has been changing quite a bit recently because the system starts to stall anywhere from western Tennessee into western Kentucky. So a lot of the modelers are kind of struggling about how much it stalls, where it stalls. And because of that, the rainfall amounts are kind of moving all over the place at the moment for portions of the lower Ohio Valley. But in general, we could be talking about a pretty healthy dose of rainfall across portions of Kentucky and Tennessee, getting over 3 inches of rainfall. Even into portions of southern Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, getting 1 to 3 inches of rain. So we could get some minor inland flooding out of this for portions of the lower Ohio Valley and into the Tennessee Valley. And with that being said, that's all I have for today. I hope everyone stays safe with this storm, and I'll see you next time.